Welcome to Dialogue, sir.
Great to be with you, Ray.
What do you want to learn from this Boao Forum for Asia in terms of your constant concern on regional security?
Well, China is a country I've been visiting. I became the foreign affairs columnist in 1995. Came almost every year since 1995. Had a chance to watch its amazing growth. And for me, the most important thing is to see it becoming this really important leader, convener in Asia, and to take the pulse of what China's thinking today, what the leadership is thinking, what the business community is thinking. And
do you think China will become a threat?
Do I think China will become a threat? To whom?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not...
But are you confident that China will be able to assume regional leadership, at least, if not produce more global impact through its enormous and growing economic might?
Yeah, I think so. That will depend, though, on the stability of its domestic platform. It's very hard to project power, whether the United States or the EU or China, if you don't have a solid economy back home that's producing the kind of income you need and satisfying the needs of your people. And so whether China can do that, whether we can do that, whether Europe can do that, so much of foreign policy begins at home.
It seems you are very concerned about the economic and the political stability in China, which is undergoing tremendous, profound economic, if not social transformation. What does that mean for you and for the rest of the world?
Well, sometimes I call China China, sometimes I call it 1/6 of humanity. So, we're talking about a very large portion of the people who live on the planet. And how those people educate themselves, provide employment, how they grow in a clean way or not, will affect everything from the quality of the air we breathe, to the cost of the pants on my legs, to the value of the currency in my pocket. So I think China's transformation that you discussed is very, very important for the whole world. That it needs to go well for the whole world.
Do you think China will be able to get along with other democracies in our neighborhood, such as ROK and Japan? This year witnesses the 70th anniversary of the Second World War, and Japan is currently ally of the US, and the security treaty will lay the groundwork for the regional security. And in many aspects, Japan could be potentially a geopolitical competitor, if not a rival for China.
Sure, I mean, historically it has been, and that will depend on the wisdom of leadership on both sides. In both Tokyo and Beijing, finding solutions to these very, very old, contentious historical problems. And, so far, they haven't done a bad job. Yes, there's been tension here and there, but really when you look at it, they haven't done a bad job.
Do you have a positive perception or the other way around about China's diplomacy?
It would depend on what theater. I'm a critic of some American diplomacy in some parts of the world.
We'll discuss American diplomacy.
So I would really say, it really depends. I've been in a school in America that's, been inviting China to become a real stakeholder, a partner in stabilizing the whole global economy and the global system. I'm not afraid of that. I welcome that because China's too big a player today not to be. And so I'm very comfortable seeing China play a bigger role, as long as it's a role that's consistent with a stable global order, not win-win, but or not winner take all, but win-win for all sides.
Let's take a second look at some of the points you raised just now.
Sure.
For example, China's presence in Afghanistan. Now, following the military drawdown there, we're going to get involved with the post-war reconstruction. In doing that, we have to talk to different political forces in this landlocked country, such as the moderates of the Taliban.
Yeah.
And the Taliban has been described in some of your articles as a Sunni foe of the Shiite-led government in the Persian state of Iran.
Yes.
And you are critical of the US government, particularly the Obama administration, in taking side with Iran to combat the ISIL in the Middle East. What do you mean?
Well, I think we need to look at the Middle East, okay, in its full complexity, and that when we do a nuclear deal with Iran, that's going to have implications across the region. And my criticism has simply been, we need to start with a regional strategy. Where are we going? What kind of region do we think will be most stable? And make sure that every step we do is consistent with that. The fact is, the Iraq war, plus the defeat of the Taliban, took away the two biggest counterbalances to Iranian power. And therefore, if we now defeat ISIS, I hate what ISIS is doing. It's terrible, it's inhuman, it's awful. But we will remove another counterweight to Iran. And so the question I'm asking is really, what is the overall strategy here? How is this going to work? And I think if China is going to be going to Afghanistan, I didn't really know that. That's news to me. I assume they're going in a commercial way, not a military way. But my only advice is be careful. It's a really wild and unstable environment.
But I'm afraid you put your finger on a very embarrassing issue. That is the issue of ethics and morality in carrying out your policy of power politics to maintain geopolitical equilibrium. And you mentioned briefly the unwise move to oust Saddam Hussein, which was a counterweight against the rise of the Persian state. And you also criticized...
the unwise thing was doing it without a plan for how to fill the vacuum afterwards. Okay, Saddam Hussein, I think, was an awful tyrant who attacked 5 different countries around him. He was not a force for stability. But if you're going to remove the bad guy, you need a plan for the morning after. And I think the big failure of our policy was that, not taking off the stage this man who poisoned thousands of Kurds, who fired Scud missiles at his neighbors, who started an 8-year war with Iran, who occupied Kuwait. He wasn't exactly a force for stability.
The question is naturally, who provided Saddam Hussein with the chemical weapons during the Iran-Iraq war? It's the US, right? But let's come back to examine the Chinese presence in Afghanistan at this moment. And do you think this is part of the exit strategy? Because you have been lamenting the fact that the US, yes, it could invade Iraq and oust that tyrant, but what is the next step? What should be the measures that should have been taken to avoid having the security dilemma in the Middle East? So in the case of Afghanistan, do you think China could be an integral part of what is supposed to be the exit strategy? We go there to assist with the reconstruction of an elected government.
Right. And
this government, of course, is supported by the US.
Well, the more that China can help Afghans build a expanding and growing economy that will create jobs, I think that would be an invaluable stabilizer. So I welcome the news that China is going to be there, and I think that could be enormously helpful.
What about the role of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization?
Well, Ray, let me tell you this. As an American citizen who's watched his brothers and sisters go off and fight in Afghanistan now for 13, 14 years, if China wants to take on that role as China, as part of a China like NATO, I totally welcome you.
Let's come back to examine the current loggerheads, if not a rivalry, between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been just re-elected and started his 4th term as the Prime Minister of Israel. Now they disagree over the issue of nuclear disarmament. It's currently not an issue of disarmament, but how to stop Iran from developing its nuclear capability. That is viewed by the Israeli government as a serious threat to its own survival. Do you think, which side do you take? Are you on? I mean,
I'm on the side of my own president. I think his position has been the right one, to see if we can negotiate a deal with Iran that will build in substantial breakout capacity and substantial verification to keep Iran below the level of acquiring a nuclear weapon. I think it's better for I think it's better for Iran. I think it's better for the Middle East and better for the world. Certainly better for Israel.
But sometimes the wisdom of foreign policy of the White House may be victim of domestic politics. If you look at why Republicans rise up against their president, and Prime Minister Netanyahu was invited to give a speech there, and Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, accused him of destroying the fabric, which is so important to the bilateral relationship. Why do you think the Republicans oppose President Obama's position on the Middle East,
well, the Republicans,
peaceful coexistence between Palestine and Israel, the idea of two states?
I mean, if President Obama said the world was round, the Republicans would say the world is flat. And on that, I might actually agree with them. But
oh, you're very dodgy, very evasive on the issue of domestic politics.
No, but no, I think the Republican Party has taken what I think is a very destructive view of trying to make President Obama fail at just about everything. And
anything but Obama.
The case of Israel is just another log on the fire, basically,
is
to block the
theater?
president. It's not just theater. It's the real deal, and it's brought our country at the federal, national level to near paralysis.
Who should we talk to? Should we talk to the White House or to the Congress on the issue of foreign policy? Because we feel confused.
Well, of course, they were actually wrong on that because they didn't even understand the nature of the deal, that it was an executive action that would be going through the UN Security Council, not a treaty, as it were, and even treaties. It's a much more complicated story than that. I'm not going to get into it. Look, we're seeing people today, right, in my country, cross real red lines. I'm seeing things I've never seen before. I'm seeing the Speaker of the House invite a foreign leader to address the Congress without that foreign leader even meeting the president, let alone informing the president before you issue the invitation. I'm seeing my Senate, a majority, the Republican majority, write to a foreign leader to tell him basically to stop negotiating with our president because he has no authority. By the way, I'm seeing a former Secretary of State who had her own email server as Secretary of State in her own closet back home, okay? So I'm seeing a lot of stuff that I've never seen before.
And yet this former Secretary of State is likely to become the next president. Yet another outcome of family politics, a presidential race between two big families and two dynasties.
Well, you know, China is not unfamiliar with dynastic politics. And,
we will try to learn from the U.S., the new form of American family politics.
Exactly. Well,
that's very sexy,
maybe
very
we're learning from each other, but I think it's sad to think that in this great country of ours, the same two families seem to be trading off, you know, the rooms at the White House, with the exception of Mr. Obama in there.
You accuse the Republicans of not consulting with your president on critical issues as to the Middle East peace process between Palestine and Israel. And that gives rise to a constant debate about which will eventually prevail. I know your answer, what your answer would be. Competitive democracy would prevail or consultative democracy. You lament that the Republicans refuse to consult the president, but China, everything is done through close political consultation with different social forces. We don't call them political forces, because in Western sense, political force in the Congress would mean opposition forces. And yet China, the Chinese Communist Party, is keen on having close political consultation with representatives from different segments of the society. Do you think we can learn from each other?
Well, you know, I think our systems are very different, and I have written that I think, you know, we have the best system of government in the world. Unfortunately, we're only getting about 60% out of that system. I think our system is better than the Chinese system, but I think you're getting about 90% out of your system. So I think you're getting a lot out of your system, and I think we're getting a little out of ours. And, but they're two very different systems. See, my view of America and China is very simple. I think we are one country with two systems. That is, I think we have a single economy, and we have two systems. And China can't move sharply to the left without affecting America. America can't move sharply to the right without affecting China. But we have two different political systems.
But do you think these two economic superpowers will be able to coexist peacefully, not necessarily based on the brainchild of President Xi Jinping, the new type of major power relationship, because the White House has been very reluctant to accept this as something that can appeal to their mind and heart in repairing, if not reconstructing, the current international economic and political order. So, are you confident?
Ray, there are many things I worry about when I wake up in the morning, but there's one thing I don't worry about: the U.S.-China relationship. Oh, do we love each other? We get up in the morning, blow each other, kiss? No, we don't. But at the end of the day, the leaders in Beijing and the leaders in Washington understand that we need and must and will enormously benefit by working together. And yes, we tug and pull, we hit each other with our purses, we do all of that, okay? But at the end of the day, the overriding self-interest is that we work together.
You know, Thomas, almost all of your points have upset me greatly, except for this one, about the respect, about prospects of the bilateral relationship.
I'm not worried.
You portrait is so rosy. Thank you very much. I have to leave you there for the moment. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Thomas Friedman, Pulitzer-winning author and columnist of New York Times. We've been discussing Middle East issues, the rivalry between Republicans and Democrats in the U.S., domestic politics, as well as, most importantly, the bilateral relationship in the 21st century between U.S. and China, the two major economic powers. We'll be back in a short while. Please stay with us.